Hello everyone, welcome back to our channel. This is Grias Atlas 256 where we make sense of our planet. Don't forget to like, subscribe and follow us. This is our latest book that has detailed explain notes and other illustrations for those of you that want to do extended reading. So today we are going to look at the causes of economic disparities between countries. Why are some countries HIC, high income countries, while others are low income countries, while others are newly emerging economies? So don't forget to like, subscribe, and those of you that need a copy of this book, I'll let you know the numbers to call on and order for one. So the first cause of the economic disparity is the historical background. The historical background for very many countries, especially those that were colonized and left with post-colonial legacies. For example, here in Uganda, we were left with an economy that was centered around areas that had fertile soils, easier transport like Eastern and Central Uganda, where they encouraged growth of a lot of crops like coffee, cotton, tobacco, while those regions that were marginalized and neglected, other regions were actually marginalized and neglected, and this left a lot of gaps in terms of infrastructure, education and health services. So that is how our historical background led to the economic disparities that we have development disparities that we have today. So, but also at a global level or at an international level, very many countries were exploited during the colonial rule. That is, the countries that were all colonized, be it in Africa, be it in Asia, be it in Latin America. So, by the time they started to seek for their independence, they had a weak economy, which very many colonial powers left them with, while other countries in the global north had built a strong industrial base that still gives them an advantage even today. I'm going to give you another example. So I think it was recently Captain Ibrahim Traore, yes, the current president of Burkina Faso. So in some of the agreements he dispersed or he left was the the French colonialists left with Burkina Faso, and in one of the terms in that agreement was that very many French investors were allowed to come and invest their money within Burkina Faso, and actually very many former French colonies, and their profits would not be charged, with an excuse that even when people of Burkina Faso would go to France and invest, their profits would not be charged. But the question was, how many people have the leverage to move from Burkina Faso to go and invest in France? That is an example of how our colonial historical background left us poor, creating a leech of development disparities. Next is unequal access to natural and economic resources. So as I've said, some regions have fertile soils, minerals or oil. Those ones tend to develop faster. Here in Uganda, regions around Lake Victoria or regions around Great Lakes have a lot of fertile soils, which favors agriculture. They have well-developed transport routes, which facilitates trade, while those areas in semi-arid regions like Karamoja struggle with poor soils. There is limited rainfall, which limits productivity, and that makes their development come to a standstill. And at the international level, countries that are well loaded with natural resources and well utilized have actually managed to develop. An example is Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia has managed to build itself as an economic hub because of its oil, and the same trend is taken by very many Arabian countries. We have United Arab Emirates, Qatar, Bahrain, all of those have managed to utilize the natural resources they have. While those countries, while countries such as Niger have few exploitative resources, that is why they face slower development. Next is education and skills. So difference in education and skills. These two play a very critical role in shaping development. How? How regions with better schools, universities, and vocational training produce a skilled workforce that supports innovation and industrialization. For example, here in Central region, we have very many schools, and the enrollment rate is very high compared to some areas within northern Uganda. So there is better employment, there is a lot of innovation, and there is a lot of industrialization taking place here in Central and some parts of Western and Eastern Uganda. While the other areas, since they are highly neglected, even their level of economic development is very slow. Even at an international level, countries like Japan and South Korea have heavily invested within their education, which has produced for them a very highly skilled labor force that has enabled them achieve rapid industrialization, which has led to rapid economic growth, unlike some countries where the quality of education is still low. Next is political stability and governance. So areas that are affected by political conflicts, for example, here in northern Uganda, faced a lot of wars, Kony, then there were some other rebels led by this lady, I'm forgetting her name. All those, Kony led the LRA, Lord's Resistance Army. So those conflicts and destroyed a lot of infrastructure, displaced a lot of people, and all that slowed the process of development, in comparison with here in Central Uganda, where we've had relative political stability, and that is why our level of economic growth is different. Internationally, countries that have managed to keep a politically stable environment have had stronger institutions, and their growth rate is very high. Best case example is Switzerland. While those countries that are always suffering from wars, their level of economic growth is very slow. Best example is South Sudan. Next is technology and innovation. Technology and innovation. So technology and innovation. So technology and innovation, that the more regions and countries adopt better technology and innovation, their levels of development is very high. Very many people around the rural urban areas of Uganda have adopted advanced technology, and their level of development is skyrocketing. While areas that still have misnomers about technology, their level of economic development is staggering. Even at an international level, countries that have adopted technology and innovation have seen a skyrocketing development rate. For example, the United States of America, while many developing countries lag behind due to limited investment in technology and skills. Okay, next is income inequalities and poverty levels. So areas that have a very high concentration of wealth are highly developed. For example, here in Kampala, we have those areas where we know that where the wealth sleep, and when you reach there, everything is different from the rural areas where we know that is the epitome of poverty. Globally, developed countries generally have stronger social protection systems, whereby wealth is not concentrated among the few, but resources are evenly distributed, and this has enabled them achieve development that is relatively universal within a country. while very many developing countries have wealth concentrated within the few, what we call the 1 to 99% ratio. Next is population dynamics, and these population dynamics further influence development disparities. Regions with high population growth struggle with provision of enough jobs, schools, and health services. On top of that, there is increased pressure on land. But in contrast, countries with slower population growth are very effective in planning and can invest more per person, leading to high levels of development. Next are environmental conditions and the climate. Areas that are prone to drought, floods, poor soils often experience lower development. For example, in Karamoja, while the areas around Lake Victoria suffer from flooding that destroys a lot of infrastructure and livelihood. While at an international level, countries that are vulnerable to climate change face repeated natural disaster, and that hinders long-term development compared to countries that have more stable climates. Next is global trade and economic relationships. So developing countries often rely on exporting raw materials, which command less economic gains, and import manufactured goods, which are very expensive. Uganda alone exports a lot of coffee while importing a lot of Nescafe, which keeps the earnings low. However, developed countries make sure they encourage value addition, advancement in technology, and favorable terms of trade, widening their development gap. So those are the causes of economic. This is levels of technology, which you've already discussed. So those are the causes of economic disparities. Please, if you have any question, please feel free to drop it in the comment section below. Thank you so much for listening. This is Curious Atlas 256. Till next time.